and welcome back to my channel. This is my little platform where I turn struggling math students into maths masters. And I post videos Tuesdays and Thursdays, so subscribe and turn on the notification button if you want to know when I post any new videos. So also, as you will know, I have a prelim exam revision class that I'm offering and revision lessons before the final exam that you are more than welcome to apply for, or you can let me know if that's something that you're interested in or if you want to attend by emailing me to mathsmonkeyhelp@gmail.com. Alright, so guys, I know I haven't posted in a while. I think it's been about a week and a bit. I have been sick, so I haven't been able to record any new videos. Really been struggling with this flu that's going around. But I'm feeling a lot better, and hopefully I can make some content for you as you prepare for your prelim exams. Right, so in this video, I'm going to be looking at graphs. And the reason why I'm making this video is because I really want to give you the skills to be able to interpret and understand any graphs that is actually given to you in an exam situation. Now, graphs doesn't really fall under a specific topic, but it can literally be asked on anything. But the way you interpret it and the way you answer the questions will be the same. And so I want to teach you the skills on how to do that. I've taken a few graphs from past papers, and I'm going to work through those questions and work through those graphs so that whenever you get when you get a graph in an exam, then you are actually able to use the steps that I teach you in this video to help you interpret the graphs so that you can actually answer all the questions correctly. All right, so without further ado, let's jump in. All right, grade 12. So we are going to be looking at graphs, and as you'll see here, the topic is on graphs, but the section doesn't fall under any specific topic like I explained in the introduction. So yeah, let's jump in. I am going to remove my face from the video so that we can make space for you to actually see the graphs. Okay, so I have used specific graphs from past papers, and I want to use the graphs so that you can see how you can expect to see graphs in an exam situation, but then also how to answer them. This specific question paper I've taken from the paper 1 November 2022 DBE NCS question paper, and yeah, so let's work through this. The reason why I've chosen this specific one is because there is essentially two sets of information that's being given to you. Okay, so let's say this was you reading an exam question now. The first thing that I always tell my students to do is you literally, before you even read any of the questions, look at the information that they give you, make sure you understand everything on the graph before you attempt to answer the questions, before you even read the questions. Because what students do is they read the questions first and then they go look for the answers, and that's when you miss things, okay? So you're going to read here. I'm going to read, I got this question paper in front of me, and I'm going to read literally from the top right down to the bottom. The two line graphs below represent the average petrol and diesel prices per liter for the period 2003 to 2013. Right, again, this line gives us the information on what the graph is about. But you'll also find that information from the heading of the graph. The heading of the graph tells you exactly what the graph is about. So this is average petrol and diesel prices for 1 liter for the period of 2003 to 2013. Okay, fine. Then I have a look. Oh, I see here's a key here. And the key then will tell me, okay, the solid line is in diesel. So everything I interpret from the solid line will be diesel, and everything that I interpret from the broken line will be petrol. And then I look at the actual numbers. Now, at first sight, this can be very confusing because you literally are seeing numbers all over the place. But what they've done here is instead of giving you an x-axis with the values and a y-axis with the values, they've literally added the actual value where you see it on the specific spot. Okay, so if you look at these two values here, I know this is both for 2003, and the solid one, the dot that's on the solid line is then diesel, and the dot that's on the dotted line is petrol. Okay, and that's how I'm going to interpret it. So this is for 2004, and I see the differences in prices, 2005, 6, right through to 2013. Okay, so now I sort of had a look at and understand everything and all the information that's given to them. Now I can actually look at the questions. So I read 1.2.1. Write down the year in which the diesel price was higher than the petrol price. Okay, so diesel is the solid line. So if I look at the graph, where it's higher means where it's above. Okay, so if you look at throughout from 2003 to 2013, you'll see that the solid line is mostly at the bottom. There's only at one point where the solid line is actually on top of the dotted line, right? So you see here, so if I look at 2016, the dotted line is above, the petrol is above diesel, and here the petrol is above diesel, and here the petrol is above diesel. But over here, the diesel, which is the solid line's dot for 2008, is above the dotted line for petrol. Okay, so that means that diesel at this point in 2008 was more expensive. So that would be your answer over there, okay? 1.2.1 will be 2008 because the solid line is above the dotted line. Okay, let's read 1.2.2. And then also look and see, okay, this is 2 marks. So generally for 2 mark questions, they want you to give sort of a straightforward answer, and that's exactly what we did. Okay, if this was an 8 mark question and I just wrote 2008, then you'd have to think, okay, I'm missing something. All right, so it says the second question, 1.2.2, calculate the difference between the price of petrol in 2012 and in 2004. So take note here, this question, we are only looking at the price of petrol. So we're only interested in the dotted lines values, and we're only interested in the value for 2004 and for 2012. So the question wants to know what is the difference in the price of the petrol. So you'd literally just take the 1104 and subtract the 413, and it will give you the 6 Rand 73. Now, obviously, already do you see how once you first make sure you understand the graph, it makes it easier then to read the questions and you'll know exactly where to find the answers because you've taken the time to first understand what is being given to you. Okay, 1.2.3, it says determine to 2 decimal places the unit ratio of the diesel price in 2015 to the diesel price in 2013. Now, this is one of those questions where when teachers teach this to you in class, you can understand it. But in this question, it was difficult to actually identify what it is that they're asking. So I want to break this down for you. So 1, it says the unit ratio of diesel. So unit ratio means you're going to have a ratio, which is the dot in between 2 numbers, where if it says unit, it means one of the values has to be a 1. Okay, so that's what it means by unit ratio. And then it tells you of diesel price in 2005 to the diesel price in 2013. So the order is always given when it's when you are asked a ratio question. So 2005 has to be first, and then 2013 has to be second. Again, we are focusing on diesel prices, right? So I go to 2005, that's the diesel price over there. And then for 2013, that's my diesel price. And now I'm going to give it in a ratio form by saying 5.56 is to 12.48. Once I have it in the order in which they are asking, now I can actually divide both sides by the value where you want the 1. So in this case, I want the 1 to be on the left-hand side, right? This is the smaller value. So I'm going to divide by 5.57, but I'm going to divide both sides by 5.57. So 5.57, sorry, not 7, 6. 5.56 divided by 5.56 gives me the 1. 12.48 divided by 5.56 gives me the 2.24. And I round off to 2 decimal places here because that's what they're asking in the question. Okay, so the important thing in this question is 1, understanding that unit ratio means that in my answer, one of the values has to be a 1. The second thing you must learn is that the order of this is important. you have to see in the question which one they want you to put first. So they wanted you to put 2005 first, and then they want you to put 2013 second. And then to get one of the values to be a 1, you are going to divide by both values. You are going to divide by the smallest value. And that your unit ratio then for this question is 1:2.24. Alright, so the next question, 1.2.4, asks calculate the total cost of 13.45 liters of petrol in 2003. Right, so again, I now go to 2003 and you'll see here that I've already circled it. And the price of petrol is 4 Rand per liter. So if I want to calculate the total, I'm just going to say 13.45 multiplied by 4 Rand. And the total for 13.45 liters, well, that time in 2003 would equal to 53 Rand and 80 cents. Okay. Then, last question for this graph. Write down the year in which the difference between the petrol price and the diesel price was less than 5 cents. Now, here, grade 12s, you actually are going to have to look at the space between the graphs. Now, remember, if they want to know where it's less than 5 cents, you're going to look at the distances for each year between the two lines and try and identify where do you see is the smallest distance. So if I just look at this graph here, do you see that here's a very small distance and here's a very small distance. So I have to look at where is it less than 5 cents. So if I look at this is 6.51 Rand for 2007 for diesel, and this is 6.55 Rand in 2007 for petrol. And if I look at there, I can see that the difference there is 4 cents. So this qualifies for my answer. But let's have a look at here quickly. Let's see here. Here it's 5.56 Rand and this is 5.62 Rand. Do you agree with me that that's a little bit more than 5 cents? Okay, so from 5.6 to 6.2, that is actually 6 cents. So the question wants to know where is it less than 5 cents, and therefore your answer will then be 2007. Okay, which was our first point that we analyzed. Okay, so that is how you would first interpret the graph, make sure you understand the graph, and then answer the questions, making sure that you are actually going to the correct places in the graph to find the answers. Okay, let's move over to the second graph. Right, so let's look at graph number 2. So again, I'm not going to read the questions. I'm going to first understand the entire graph, and then I'm going to answer the questions. So the reason why I'm using this graph is why I've chosen this graph is because this graph has got a lot of things going on. And if you can make sure that you understand a complex graph like this, then no matter what type of graph they give you in an exam, you are actually able to do it. All right, so let's read here. 5.2, the graph below shows the estimated total population of South Africa and the annual population growth from 2013 to 2017. So already in this instruction, they tell you that this is actually 2 sets of data, right? For years 2013 to 2017. So if I look here, estimated total population and annual growth. So let's try and see what graph refers to what. So you will note that you will always, in most cases, you will have an x-axis and you will have a y-axis, right? So in this case, our x-axis represents our years. Then on the left-hand side, we've got a y-axis that represents the total population. So this is the amount of people in that specific year. On the right-hand side, you have the population growth in percentage. So that is your line graph over here, right? So on the left-hand side, you've got your total population, and the total population is represented. If I look at my bar graph, do you see that my bar graph's values are in line with what is shown on my left-hand y-axis, right? Then population growth obviously then has to be the other graph, which is then this broken line graph here. Okay, so you see there. So automatically I realized that these dots here represent the percentage that was the percentage growth for that year. And then the bar graphs represents the actual amount of people in that year. Okay, so I've looked at the heading and I've understood what's being given to me. I've interpreted the x-axis, I've interpreted the y-axis, and then I've looked at the actual graphs information, and I saw the clear link where the bars are linked to the left-hand side's y-axis, and the lines graph is actually linked to the right-hand side's y-axis. And now that I understand and know that information, I can actually jump onto the questions because I now fully understand the information that's given to me. So let's read the first question. 5.2.1. Write down in words and without the use of numbers the population of South Africa in 2013. So again, I'll go to 2013. The population value, so not the growth, the population value is this 52 million. And they want you to write this entire value in words. Okay, so specifically they emphasize that they don't want you to use numbers here. So you can't use, say, 52 as a number and then 982,000 as in words. Everything has to be written in words. Okay, and this is the case whenever they ask you to answer something in words. Okay, so how do I write that? So you read the number, grade 12s, and you write it just as you would read it. So whenever I see 6, I like to separate the 6's because then I know whatever is in front of the 6 digits is million. So I've got 52 million, and then I move to my 100,000. So this is 982,000. So I will write it out as is. So I will write it as 52,982,000. Take note, nowhere in this answer do I have an actual numerical value. Okay, so that's 5.2.1. Now let's have a look at 5.2.2. Determine, rounded to the nearest 10,000, the population increase from 2015 to 2016, right? So from 2015 to 2016, the population increase, now remember, not growth or percentage, the population increase, right? They want you to round the answer off. So you're going to take first to find the increase. In other words, how much more was added to 2015 to get 2016? So to find that answer, you're going to say this one minus that one. Okay? So then I'll end up having 56020,718, which matches that, minus 54901,943. And the difference is then this value over here, right? Now, I want to emphasize, grade 12s, that whenever you are working with large numbers, double check that you are not making mistakes. When I was typing and creating this presentation, I can't tell you how many times I made mistakes just because I missed a 0 or I didn't see a 7 or a 8 in the actual calculation. Okay, so when you're working with large numbers, always go back and double check that you didn't make any mistakes. Okay, but now this is the answer, but the question wants you to round it off to the nearest 10,000. So if I look at this, 10,000, here's the 10 and here's the 1,000, right? So this value here is what I need to round off the 8, okay? So the 8 is greater than 5, so it makes the 1 in front of it to a 2, and then the rest of the values in thousands. Now I have a video on rounding where if you're not sure how to do this, please refer back to that video. It will show you exactly to know where you actually should be rounding off to. Okay, so that's your answer there, rounded off to the nearest 10,000. Right, now let's move to 5.2.3. At this point in time, I would have told my student, okay, let's take a break. Do you have any questions? Is everyone okay? Take a breather. So if you need to, pause this video, grab a cup of tea, just brace yourself and then come back, because this is sort of a lot of information coming your way. Okay, 5.2.3. 5.2.3 states, calculate the annual population growth, right? The annual population growth for 2015 using the following formula. The current population minus the previous population over the previous population times 100. So this already should be ringing bells that this is actually the population growth in percentage, right? So what they want you to calculate for 2015 is what was the percentage growth from 2014 to 2015. And the current population in your formula would then be this value, and then your previous would then be the year before. Okay, so then you would just substitute it in the formula as is. So the 54901,943 minus the 53947,998, and you will add it over the previous population again and multiply it by 100. And your answer is 1.78. Now, if you knew and went through this graph before the time and made sure that you understood this, you would know that this percentage should correspond with this specific dot, because this specific dot is the population growth. So here, if you're calculating the population growth, then your answer here should correspond with this little point here, which in our case it does. Do you see here's 1.5 to 2, and our point falls literally between that, which is 1.78%. Okay, do you see the benefits now of making sure that you understand the graph first before you attempt the questions? Now the last one, 5.2.4. The answer sheet shows the bar graph for the estimated total population and annual growth from 2013 to 2017. If the 2018 population was, and then they give you a total which is obviously more than 2017, and the population growth, which is the percentage, is 2.13, complete the graph for 2018 on the answer sheet. So essentially on the answer sheet grade 12, they've given you an extra year, which is 2018 year. And what they wanted to see you do is to see that you are able to put this 2.13 from this dot and actually plot it to 2.13, which will then be somewhere over there. So this dot for 2018 would have to be there, and then the population has to be by 57, which is a little bit higher, 57 over here. You see there, that's halfway through that. So let me show you what the graph should look like. So this is actually from the memo of the question paper. So do you see here that this here is where your percentage, this is the y-axis that you look at for the percentage, right? So the percentage was 2.13, and then you had to draw this bar, which shows that you know that where the value that it lies between these two values on the y-axis here. So you would have actually gotten marks here, one for getting this point correct and getting this value in line there, and then actually joining the line, you would actually have gotten a mark for as well. Okay, so that is your second graph. Let's do one more, right? One more graph. Graph 3. So this is the last one, and you'll see that I always choose graphs that look very busy. And that's because a lot of the times when students see graphs that are so busy, they get overwhelmed and then they just go to the question and hope they can find the answers. And I'm like, don't do that. Rather go and see and understand and look at the graph. Look at the y-axis, look at the key, look at the heading, look at everything first, then answer the questions. So let's do that for this question. So this question paper was taken from paper 1, November 2021. Okay, the graph below indicates the energy sources used for cooking in different provinces. Different energy sources used for cooking. So here I will look, okay, the left side, so all of these actually represent percentages, right? So 100% obviously represents the entire population. And then I see there's a key there, right? So if I look there, I'll see, okay, the x-axis is got the different provinces, right, in South Africa. But then here on the right, we then have the key for the different energy sources, right? So automatically I understand now, okay, I know what's on the x-axis, I know what's on the y-axis, I know what's actually being given in the graph, and I know what each of the keys stand for. Now that I understand what is given to me, I actually start and answer the questions. So use the graph above to answer the questions that follow. So 1.2.1, identify the source of energy that is mostly used for cooking. So this entire thing is used for cooking. So which section is mostly used for cooking? So if you have a look here, from all sort of the different keys, patterns, most of them have this sort of clear dark part colored in. Do you guys see that? All right. So what is the key for that? It's electricity. So the energy source that most people use for cooking is electricity. Okay, 1.2.2. Name the province that uses the most wood for cooking. So wood is this diagonal lines here. So if you look at this is the wood here. Okay, so they're asking for which section for which province has the most wood usage. Do you see this here? This is then the most of all of the provinces. So what province is this? The answer then is Limpopo. Okay, so these questions, these answers, you could literally is just getting from the graph. Looking at the graph, understanding the graph, and then getting the answers from the graph. Right, let's have a look at 1.2.3. The price of paraffin fluctuates. On the 3rd of February 2021, the price was 764.59 cents per litre. A. Write down in rand the cost of 1 litre of paraffin. So in other words, this is already the price of 1 litre, right? But they want you to give this in rand. Now, if this is cents, you literally just multiply this by 100, because remember there's 100 cents in 1 rand. Okay, so if you think of our currency, 50 cents is a half of a rand, right? So that means if I have 250 cents, that means I have 100 cents. So that means that it equals to 1 rand. So I literally am going to take this and multiply it by 100 to get an answer of 7 rand 65. Okay, now remember they say in rand, so you don't give more than 2 decimal places. Okay, so if you think about when you go to the shop, they never give you a price that is more than 2 decimal places for rands. So this is 7 rand 7.65 rand. Okay, which we say in South Africa is 7 rand and 65 cents. Okay, next one. Determine to the nearest rand the cost of 12.5 liters of paraffin. So we now have the price for 1 liter. So to find out the price for 12.5 liters, I'm literally going to take 12.5 and multiply it by the price. And that will give me 95.625. But now look here, it says to the nearest rand. Now to the nearest rand means there's now no cents. Okay, so that means I need to see the 6 is going to change this 5 to a 6. Again, this is explained in my video on rounding, and you end up with 96 rand as your final answer. Okay, last one, 1.2.4. Name another form of energy that could be used for cooking, that could fall under other. So in other words, you have to mention any other source that could be used for cooking that is not given amongst these 4 options here. Okay, so you could have given answers like coal and solar power or any power that is not listed here that can be used for you to cook. Okay, and that's how you would interpret graphs. Always reading and understanding the graph first and then attempting the questions. Alright, so there's that video on graphs. I hope you liked it, and if you did, please would you be so kind and give it a thumbs up. Yeah, and if you have any recommendations for future videos, or if you just want to let me know sort of how you're finding the videos, add it in the comment section below. It's really nice for me to hear from you guys because I sort of do my planning and I gauge what it is that I must put on this channel based on your feedback. So I would really appreciate that. Yeah, and there is a video. There's a lot of people who have been asking me for a video on packaging. Guys, I am trying. It's not an easy one to put together for you, so I'm still sort of working my way through the presentation, and I want to make it a comprehensive lesson, but at the same time, I also need to squeeze it into one lesson. So yeah, I'm still busy with that, but packaging lesson is on its way. And yeah, so thank you so much for watching and for supporting the channel, and I will see you in the next video. All right, bye guys.